All right, traders, this is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and today is Friday, October 11th, and this is your end of day recap. So, real quick, everything that we're going over today is information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. So, we got a pretty crazy week, right? The trade meeting, trade talks, all that stuff dominated the news wires today. I think for the most part, everybody was, focused on what's going to happen because we've seen these whipsaw moves from day to day, depending on what's going to happen. Somebody's leaving early, somebody's not leaving, they're staying. The market is, definitely fixated on that. And what we try to do on days like this is kind of really look at the technicals to kind of give us a view of where things are, relative to support resistance. Are things oversold, overbought in the short term? These things, I know that people think that technicals don't work in a headline tape. uh, I think if you're using them the right way, they're actually helping you a lot in terms of risk to reward, right? It depends on how you're looking at things, right? From the outside, you probably look at it and say, "Oh my God, we just moved, this many handles, S&P handles on this headline," right? So there's some of that. Of course, there's that, and we can't completely get away from that. But I think at the end of the day, what happened here, kind of a little bit of sell the news. What we tweeted out earlier, I think really, made sense, right? So what did I say earlier? Again, because I never like to say like I'm doing this, after the fact or anything like that, because of course anybody can look at behind and say, hindsight 2020. This is what you should have done or whatever. But here's what I mentioned earlier, and I mentioned this, before the trade meeting, before they released anything. But I said, hey, notice, a couple things. Notice that we are, the 1 hour update that I posted here, which is S&P on the 1 hour. I said, hey, take a look. The RSI is really overbought, right? That's an 80 if you can't see it on my screen. But 1 hour for the indexes, once they get to be the same thing to the downside, once they're around like a 20, right? Typically oversold is a 30. So once you get to a 20, it's pretty darn oversold, right? We saw this back here, and we talked about it when that happened, when this version point of control was taken out last week. But similarly, we got to, and I think we actually got a little bit above that. But we got above an 80 RSI, and the 70 is overbought. Now the indices, they normally just don't stay that overbought or oversold for that long, unless something really bad or really really good is happening. But again, they usually, even if something really good is happening, they usually burn those overbought levels off, and then kind of go, and then digest, backfill a little bit, and then kind of go from there. So and then the other thing that we noticed is we've kind of come back to the scene of the crime a few times here, which is 3000, 3020, but really back to 2090, which was last week's top of value, which you could see not just once or twice, but three, four, different times that was resistance. So kind of just what why I look at this and why I think it helps me, in particular. So look at what happened. We did hit that level and fell apart. So again, there's news on the tape, but if you looked at this without like kind of like a blank canvas and said, hey, this is really getting overbought, you can make these decisions. And that's why I tweeted this out earlier. And I said, hey, just watch it, right? Because we don't want to be really taking risk, in my opinion. So again, it goes down to risk reward. What's a better situation? When we broke, remember I was saying yesterday that I thought that this was interesting, that we could not get overvalue. And then I think I tweeted this out. Let's see if I can find this really quickly. I tweeted a lot of stuff today. Some jokes, some funny, some not. But I had mentioned after the close yesterday. Sorry, I'm still recovering from a cold. But I said, watch this top of value. What my statement was after the close yesterday, because we stalled here for the second time in a day. I said, Price has remained in value for 4 weeks. Can it break out tomorrow? Somebody told me flat out no. But we so the good thing is we were able to do that, right? We were out of value, and until we got super overbought, we had a nice trending day, which happened pretty quick, by the way. But so again, looking at risk to reward, was this a good place to take risk going before they announced the meeting? So you could say it was a little bit of sell the news, but in my opinion, we were really overbought short term, right? So I see, of course, things. Everybody's sarcastic and funny on Twitter, is talking about a rug pull and so forth, and you know. But if you kind of look at these things and say, hey, do we have a lot left in the tank to kind of take the next level higher, or are we already stretched into an announcement? Well, we were pretty darn stretched, right? We went from 2889, right? So we basically went up 100 handles from low to high. So again, at the end of the day, what else were you looking for, right? At the end of the day. Now, again, I'm not perfect, right? I think I put on some little trades, because I'll tell you what is the worst signal for the day was option activity. They're buying calls at the wrong time today. They're buying Micron. They're buying AMD, short-term stuff, all chasing stuff. They're buying XLE. They're buying Deer. All here. I'll give you an example, and you can kind of match this stuff up. But here's Deer, which I think still looks pretty good. But do you want to be following this stuff? Deer, big opening print. Maybe this will work out. This is November 1st. But this was at 11:48. So let's go to the top. Let's go to the tape. Here's where they bought. Right up here, at the end of this hour. Right? Is that good flow? I mean, is that something that you want to follow? So again, it's really tricky. Like, I'm starting to think more and more that the signals that we see on the tape, other than for like a quick scalp. But look at this. I mean, again, I don't have the time perfectly, but we could probably match it here. 11:48. Here. This is where they bought calls in Deer. Now, we could do this in a couple other names, but is that a good buy by someone? I don't think so. Now, again, now let's try to look at this, because in terms being a little bit more neutral than just for today. Deer does actually look like it's trying to break out here, so that might be a little bit better. So that you could kind of say, okay, well, maybe that wasn't the best time of the day to buy up here. But it's the same thing. Like AMD was another one. AMD will be an interesting to watch one to watch for next week. But yeah, they piled into some AMD, again, probably all at the wrong time, right? So, and same thing with people and you can it's the same thing with people tweeting stuff out. Oh, there was a call buyer. Oh, at the highs of the day. So again, let's move on from that. But I think that is an interesting chart. Again, all this stuff I try to use as ideas. Why I follow this. Short-term momentum, sure, you could try to scalp a little bit. But, what I saw XLI calls, this big chunky block of XLI calls. That was at 10 o'clock. And then we saw more. There was one that was rebooked. That's why you don't see it. Maybe it was this one. But they did some rebookings of some XLI calls. But let's look. Let's match it up. XLI, first of all, did not into value. So this was at 10:04. So maybe this was a little bit better. No, not really. They didn't make any money on this trade unless they happen to scalp and sell it here. Right, so does that make sense? Again, I try to make sure that you guys see this, because and then you could be the judge for yourself. Rather than someone saying, hey, they bought XLI calls, and you look and it's like, oh, wow, they did a good job. It was up 1.9%. Well, no, they bought it, very close to the high of the day. All right, so let's move on. So where are we for next week? And by the way, here are the best performing groups. Just a little bit of recap because I always like to do this at the end of the week. Spy, again, remember how we started the beginning of the week where we kind of slid, we're sliding. So we did finish up for the week. Spy finished up 0.7%. Small caps right in line with that. Qs finished up a little bit better than that. Um, IWM, emerging markets, as well as EFA. Oh, I want to talk about this as well. And TLT and some of those safety hiding places sold off this week. Steel, actually, oil services was up at the top. It's a little bit of a shocker to me. We did see some call buying in both OIH and XOP today. Again, that more short-term momentum type stuff. Transports, which we talked about yesterday, were up 2.5% for the week. Semiconductors up 1.8%. Industrials, all did pretty well for the week. And again, utilities, which I tried to short, I was able to hit one target, and then the rest I think is back to my cost basis. Don't know if that's going to work yet. We'll look at that chart in a second. But yeah, also GDX, XLU, XLP, home builders, which have been I think a kind of hiding place as well, have worked really well with rates going down. REITs also underperformed. Just looking at international areas, Greece, EUFN, where did that finish today? If you're not familiar with that ETF, it finished up 4%. I try to find another day. If you can find it, great. Again, this is going to be, there's always going to be gaps in this chart because it's a ETF that trades in U.S. hours, but it tracks European stocks, which open up before we do. So that's why there's always gaps in this because their market is open when our market is closed. So as soon as our market opens, it adjusts to where European stocks are. But I went back and tried to look for like the last 2 years to see when European stocks have been up 4%. I could not find it in the last couple of years. So really interesting to see this group. And if we look at this, because there was so again, I go back and forth with call buying, to say what is useful, what's not useful. But, there's a pretty big block of EFA calls that went up out of the money. So how would I view this? If I can, well, first of all, if I can find it. So anyway, why were these stocks up so much? It wasn't on the China stuff, the China-U.S. deal. It was because they were actually talking about a Brexit deal. Maybe they can have a race and say what's going to happen first: Brexit, so a Brexit deal, or a U.S.-China deal. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that question, but that was going on too. That's why these stocks, it probably was a combination of things. But where did Europe finish for the day? The DAX was up 2.9%. I mean, that you could also probably look to see when that's been up 2.9%. Can't say I could recall that happening. You could probably go back a couple of years to look to see when the DAX has been up 2.9% in a day. Been down 3% there, but I'm sure it's going to be a while. So what does this look like? So first of all, what is the EFA ETF? It's International Developed Markets. I call it the SPY for international because it's a lot of blue chip names that are in this EFA. It's a lot of Japan and it's a lot of Japan and a lot of Europe. So if it could possibly crack above this, that's not a perfect trend line, but I think you kind of get what I'm looking at. Oops, let's keep it red. It's got to get above value. So top of value, and again, that basically means right now it's basically in a range. If we can get above value, then we start to break out. Get much more exciting. 65.83 is a level to watch. So what did they do? They put up 48,000 of these October 25th calls. So just going out a couple weeks, and look at where they went to. This was the 66.5 calls. So I think that's reasonable for a lotto. Again, it's a big order. It's $1.3 million, but for institutions, maybe a little bit more than a lotto. But they're really going, they're going out of the money and they're going super short term. So, is it worth taking a shot? I bought a little bit of them, but to me, it's a lotto for the size that I took. under $1,000 trade. So yeah, so I think that was actually one of the most interesting trades that I saw on the tape today. The rest of the stuff is kind of chasing. Where you're buying XLI because industrial's up. You're buying Deere because they might get an agriculture deal. Um, so and so a couple other. Did we see anything else that was really that interesting? Again, here was last week's performance. Interesting. TLT was up 2.3%, and what was it this week? Down 3.8%. Option activity. And again, we're going to start to see more and more um, trades related to earnings. But yeah, there wasn't anything, I think, other than what I've already covered. SWK is another industrial name. Saw some calls in that one. All right, so moving on. So how does this leave us for next week, right? So video is about 15 minutes long already. That's the main thing, right? We kind of just covered some things here. Review of today's option activity, where it was, I think, prudent to take profits. And by the way, we definitely had some nice ones. This one, okay, so this one from yesterday, Alley Financial, I was able to take a target right around the highs of the day today. So this worked pretty well from yesterday. So right, Alley Financial, whole bunch of January leaps, January 2022 leaps. And when I tweeted this one out, I mentioned that I thought it was at a pretty good risk to reward spot, right? So I was able to take off a good chunk of that order today for profit. So that did work pretty well. Oh, BHC was one name that I was thinking of that saw some momentum calls today. They are way underwater from where they initially bought. I think it was April calls. They were buying April calls all in here, so they are way underwater. So they were buying some short-term calls. I don't know why it jumped that much, 7%, but maybe a name to watch next week. Ugly looking chart. So we closed inside. So let me get to what I'm going to be looking at for next week. We actually closed in value. There was some question that we did not. So this is a good thing for us to get above 29.65. We'll see how we set up. Maybe we back and fill a little bit. I will be going over in the weekend member video. I'll be talking about the 1 hour value area, how that's just been really working in terms of setting yourself up for risk to reward, when to take new trades versus when to not, and a couple other things that I like to look again, indicators, kind of looking under the hood. A couple of things that I put out on Twitter too was looking at the advanced decline line, right? I saw a lot of people getting really negative 2 weeks ago. Usually when people are throwing in the towel like that and starting to short when we haven't really had a full breakdown, that's your area to kind of look to for almost for longs, right? When you see people starting to put when you see traders shorting things in uptrends, that's usually a signal that a rebound is coming pretty quickly, right? And I saw people doing that. Again, I don't know what the fascination is. I'm mostly a trend trader, so I know not to make that mistake of shorting things in uptrends. I just don't think that's the best risk to reward, right? Things that are in downtrends, no problem. Like you look at Beyond Meat. I was shorting this today, right? This is breaking down, it looks like to me. So I had bought a put yesterday, covered it, reestablished it, but I think this has more to go to the downside. And I highlighted some levels on Twitter yesterday for somebody yesterday. But something like this, right? Apple, which I'm long in the Tribeca Trade Group tactical portfolio, which is a cash portfolio, breaking out to all-time highs. Right? Stick with the trend. We never know how long trends are going to last, but no reason to fade this thing at all. Where was your sell signal in this? Maybe here, I guess, from last earnings. Okay, I kind of get that. breaking the 50-day moving average. But if you're relying on the 50-day moving average or value, we got back into value pretty quickly. So really positive there in Apple. Nice to see that break out. But again, looking at the advanced decline line, and I was chatting with somebody about this as well. A couple things happened, right? Back in the middle of September. First of all, when we look at the 5-year chart of IWM, sorry, this is a longer video than I expected. So if we look at small cap value versus growth, look at how extended this got, where growth was outperforming. So yeah, it was due, for growth to actually sell off a little bit. And things like, even though I'm trying to, so again, maybe I'm going against my principle here with a counter trend trade, trying to short a utilities, which are in an uptrend. But, we go back to this, and I don't think traders are realizing REITs did fine today, even though they're the ones that have been outperforming. Consumer staples, I think, were a little bit weak today. But, hey, there's plenty of things that are in uptrends. Some traders on Twitter just may not be paying attention to this, right? I made a comment earlier too about the FANG stocks, right? If you're looking at I got into a discussion with somebody who's no longer on Twitter, by the way, who was only looking at the FANG stocks, and he kept saying that, hey, we need the FANG stocks to go higher to bring the market higher. I'm like, what? This is the start. Unfortunately, what happened with most of the FANG stocks is they lost leadership in the fourth quarter of 2018. And I mentioned this to this person who was a complete scam artist on Twitter, who was only looking at the FANG stocks. And I said, hey, listen, they lost leadership and they haven't been able to retake it. And they argued back and forth with me, but that's the story. I mean, Amazon right now is not a leader of the market. And so the problem is, it's nice to have a developed focus list, but if you're only looking at a small select group of stocks, you're going to miss out. Because what happens is stocks do lose leadership from time to time. And this group has been, Facebook, not Facebook, Netflix, other than, of course, bouncing the last couple days, this is not a market leader anymore. It's lost market leadership. Same thing with the rest of them. So it's nice because they have liquid options, but this is not where leadership is, and it lost all of this back at the end of last year, and it hasn't been able to retake it. So if you're looking at these stocks, and you're probably thinking, yeah, the market stinks, because your focus is too small. Google probably looking the best out of the bunch. Right, so again, I'm making a lot of points here, but hey, this is what we do at Tribeca Trade Group: is we focus on what is actually trending, not what we want to have trending. So what else? So again, making a larger point there in the video, but I do these the Friday videos are a little bit longer. So what else? Advanced decline line, not breaking down, not showing resemblance to last year, which is good. And then if we look at credit spreads, which I always like to look at in case there's some danger in the marketplace, we got close to the highs of the year, and it got firmly rejected. So again, there's no stress currently. Now that could change, but currently there's no stress in credit. That's also a good thing, right? So if you're looking for sell signals, I don't see any. In looking under the hood in a lot of things. Does that mean that we're going to shoot right to the highs? No, it doesn't mean that either. But, I think that we're going to kind of continue. I think they outlined 3 possible phases, so it sounds like the trade talks are going to go on for a long time. So you're going to just have to continue to be a very disciplined trader. That's what's working in this market, to be disciplined, to take targets, to not get over the tips of your skis, to not let option. I'm saying this, and you could hate me for it, but to not let option activity ruin your P&L by following trades and thinking that they know something. I tell you, I reviewed my P&L so far for the month of October. The ones that I followed and haven't used discipline, following option activity has been my biggest losers. My biggest winners have not seen option activity. Roku was a really nice one. Now, granted, they did see some calls, way after the fact, after the move had already taken place. Lulu is a great name as well for me so far in the month of October. Um, this was another one we talked about on Bloomberg. TSM acts an absolute beautiful move, and a few other names, right? That we did pretty well on. All right, guys. So that's it for today's video. So kind of just take things one day at a time. You're not going to get the green flag of saying, "Oh, there's a trade deal," and like pile back into the market. It's going to continue to be. I don't want to say a struggle, but it's going to continue to be a process of taking trades at the right time, waiting for being patient, waiting for a signal, and then being disciplined, and not getting over the tips of your skis at the wrong time. And again, all things that we're kind of covering. Much more analysis coming at you if you're a member of Tribeca Trade Group. If you're not a member of Tribeca Trade Group, what are you waiting for? Email me if you have any questions. Really the beauty of the group is, we do the analysis. I provide the trade ideas, but you get a community of traders that are exceptional, right? Some of the traders that we have in the room have been killing it, and their ideas are great. And then what happens is somebody brings up a couple ideas. I go through the charts and we talk about if it's a good setup or not. I think it just really helps to have other people to trade with. So I offer one of the lowest membership prices out there because I want to encourage people to try it and to give me referrals as well when they do like it, because I give free months when you give me referrals. But it's all about the trading community and helping one another and getting through days and weeks like this, so that we can all kind of squeeze some money out. All right, guys, have a great weekend, and again, more analysis to come if you're a member of Tribeca Trade Group. Thanks, everybody.